What's going on? Today I'm going to show you guys how to install aftermarket horns on my 2018 Toyota Corolla. So here's everything we'll be using today. We have a 10mm wrench and a 12mm wrench. We just have a nut and washer. Next we have 14 gauge red and black wiring, which we'll be using to connect the two horns. Then we have 4 female disconnects, 1 1/4-inch ring terminal, 1 spade terminal, and then 2 T-taps. And then here we have a wire crimper, next a screwdriver for the bolt. And here we have some heat shrink tubing and electrical wire tape, which is optional, but I'm just going to use it for extra water security. Here are the two horns we'll be using. They're the Hella twin tone disc horns. One's a 350 amps and the other low tone is 420 amps. Coming out of the box, here's what they look like. So here I'm going to measure the wires to the length that I want it to be at. So around there should be good. So now that I have my wires at my desired length, I'm going to attach the 4 female disconnects to each end of the wire. So next I'm going to take my wire strippers and measure about 1/4 of an inch from the end. And right there should be good. So now that you have your exposed wiring, take your female connector and add it so that the end of the black wiring just meets where the wire is going to be crimped at. So now that you have this, we're going to crimp it down. And since this is a 14 gauge, make sure it's at the blue, which 14 gauge corresponds with. And lightly tug it to see if it comes apart, and if it doesn't, then it's good. So the wire color for the connections does not matter. I just chose red and black because typically the positive is red and the black is the negative or the ground. Just make sure the gauge is the same on both of these, and these are both 14 gauge. Also, if you are using heat shrink tubes, don't forget to put them on before you connect your last connector, like I forgot to do on this black one, but it's okay because I'll just use electrical wiring or electrical tape. So for shrinking the tube, make sure it goes over this blue part a little bit, and then use your heat source to heat it up. So next what I'm going to do is use the T-taps to connect a third wire, a small little third wire, to the black and red wire we already cut. So one of them for the ground wire is going to go to this bolt to the frame of the car for the ground, and then for the red wire we're going to use a T-tap to go to the power source, which is on the horn right here. So after measuring the length I would need, I just cut the 2 small wires that would go to the larger ones, and then I'm going to connect them using the T-taps. But first I'm going to connect the ring terminal to the negative or the ground wire, and then the spade terminal to the power supply. So after adding the ring terminal and the spade terminal on, I'm going to add the female terminal or the male terminals. So here's what these look like after adding the connections to the that will go on the T-taps. So here's what the T-taps look like. And the main wire is going to sit in between these two prongs. And then when you close it off like that, you have this little slot. And what's going to go in there is the male spade terminal that you just applied to either the ring or the other spade terminal, and then it's gonna insert in there like that, and then these are connected now. Putting these T-taps on, grab yourself some pliers and then make sure it sits in that little groove. Find about the halfway point, which is about right there, and then be conscious of where you want the wiring coming out of. So for me, I want it going up for the ring terminal, so I'm gonna have it pointed up, and then pliers just like that, and then close it down. So it may be a little tricky, but there you have it. So after we have the two T-taps connected, we're now going to move on to installing the horns. Now we're going to take the stock horn off using the 12mm wrench. So here's the power supply cord that the spade terminal is going to go into. And then the bolt from the stock horn, we're going to just use it to put on the other horn. So I'm going to put the right horn on first, but before I do that, I'm going to put the two terminals on because it's going to be hard to put them on after they're on the car. And these prongs don't matter if it's positive, negative, or positive. So I'm going to put these on and then put it on the car. Now that I have the T-taps on, I'm going to go ahead and connect this wire to the black one, like so, and then the red, like that. So before I put the horn on, I'm going to run this wire up through a little gap in between there, so just so it's easier to reach, and then this is going to connect right here. So I got my 10mm wrench and I'm going to take this bolt off. So now with this bolt off, I'm going to run this wire up through here. Just like so. And then put that in there. And then screw it back on. And then with the second horn, we're going to connect these like we did the first one. And then get that extra bolt that we needed to bolt it down to this side of the car. So here's our setup. The last thing to do is to connect the red terminal to the power supply. And that should do it. So now we could test it. So that's the installment of aftermarket horns on my 2018 Toyota Corolla. If you do go about this method, just be aware of the T-taps because they're not always the most reliable and they get a bad rap because of it. But I chose to use T-taps because it was out of convenience and this is the way I did it. Some people may choose soldering, which is more durable or better connection, more reliable, but this is the way I did it. So thanks for watching.